Thank you very much. I would say, in listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job, and it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace, and I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see. We'll see how we do. It's a very disgraceful situation. Every single legal scholar and expert said this is no case. It shouldn't be brought, and it certainly could have been brought 7 years ago, not in the middle of a presidential election. It was all...
That's true. Regardless of whether or not you think that he's guilty or you think that he's innocent, isn't it ironic, the timing of this whole thing? And, you know, nobody is really having a conversation about the fact that even the Fani Willis DA over in Georgia, and I'm always amazed at the fact that y'all still rocking with this chick, the Fani Willis administration in Fulton County in Georgia was reported to have met with, along with the Atlanta mayor, Kamala Harris in the White House, before Vice President Kamala Harris in the White House, before, and it is public record, you can go and look it up. This is not a bombshell. This is just stuff that a lot of these news agencies are not necessarily reporting on, and they disputed it, and I was one of the only people that reported on it because it is public information, and you can look up all of the meetings, or whoever it is meeting with who over in the White House. They traveled over to the White House in order to meet with them. Who knows what they talked about, but it just so happened to be charges that was filed against Trump over in Georgia right after that. Here, over in New York, we already know what happened previously in New York, but in addition to that, you got this hush money trial, which is largely inconsequential outside of the bad press and the marketing that, in my opinion, the Biden administration is hoping for Trump to get as a result of this November election. Now, again, it just so happens to be happening. If they wanted to bring these charges up, they could have brought it up 7 years ago. If they wanted to bring these charges up, they could have brought it up 7 years ago. But they just so happen to be bringing it up during election season, and they're trying to sentence him, which obviously this hush money trial is just a big sham, in my opinion. They're trying to sentence him on July 11th, right before the Republican National Convention. Now, it's largely inconsequential, even though they are saying that these are low-level felonies, these 34 counts that they saying that they convicted him of, and Trump is saying that Mother Teresa couldn't beat these charges, is largely inconsequential because not even really doing no jail time. In addition to that, or they're saying that they don't anticipate it ever being a sentence because there's no mandatory or minimum sentence as allowed, and because he's never been convicted of anything before, a felony or anything like that. They're saying it's unlikely that anybody that would be convicted of this would ever have to be sentenced to any prison time as a result of it. Who knows? New York, in my opinion, is a wild place, and it's absolutely corrupt when it comes to this presidential election, obviously aligned with Georgia. But more importantly, it's a play in order to get people and try to discourage them from what's going to happen in election 2024. And so they're trying to influence what's happening in an election even more than what they was trying to claim that social media was doing back in the early 2020s, 2016, and so on and so forth. But I think that it's all, the timing is very interesting, to say the least. Let me continue to hear what the rest of you got to say.
Done by Joe Biden. This judge contributed to Joe Biden, and far worse than that, but I'm not allowed to talk about it because I have a gag order. Far worse than that, by 1,000 times worse than that. The worst I've ever heard, but I can't talk about it. It'll be talked about, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. But it'll be talked about in the history books. What's happening here is weaponization at a level that nobody's seen before, ever. And it shouldn't be allowed to happen. So I'll stay around here. This is 5 weeks. And 5 weeks of really essentially not campaigning, although I took a big lead in the polls over the last few weeks. Something's going on. Because I think the people of this country see that this is a rigged deal. It's a weaponized deal for the Democrats to hit their political opponent. for Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States. He's destroying our country. He's letting millions of people from jails, from prisons, from insane asylums, from mental institutions, drug dealers pour in. Venezuela, if you look at their crime statistics, they've gone down 72% in crime because they're releasing all their criminals into our country because of this horrible president that we have. And then they have a protest of Robert De Niro yesterday. He's a fool. He's a broken down fool standing out there. And he got maggot. He got maggot yesterday. He got a big dose of it.
Yeah, I seen that and I actually reviewed that video, and I'm gonna be breaking this down a little bit more on the Millionaire Morning Show tomorrow morning on Friday. So I'm glad that this happened on Thursday. So we can deep dive into it on Friday on the Millionaire Morning Show because we cover everything and we try to figure out where it comes back down to the money. But I did see the Robert De Niro breakdown where he basically even admitted that it was an ad campaign because he's a huge Biden supporter, and it was a targeted ad campaign for him to be outside of the Trump trial in order to advocate for Biden-Harris administration and to say all of the wild things that he said about the election in front of Trump. It's absolutely insane. Go and watch it on the Millionaire Morning Show. We'll probably clip it up anyway.
But I just want to say it's a very unfair trial. It should have never happened. If it was going to happen, it should have happened 7 years ago. As you know, Bragg didn't want to bring it. The Southern District didn't bring it. The FEC didn't bring it. This judge didn't even let us use the #1 election attorney. He's making the rules. He doesn't know anything about elections. He doesn't know anything about voting and vote counts. He doesn't know anything about this stuff. That's not his profession. We had the leading election expert in the country, Brad Smith, ready to testify. Wouldn't let him do it. They wouldn't let another gentleman who represented, and you know very well, you saw it. It was the worst I think I've ever seen anyone treated on a stand. Bob Costello wouldn't let him talk about all of the hundreds of emails that he was sent by a gentleman, another gentleman, who I can't mention because I'm gagged. Every time I speak to you, you ask me simple questions. I'm not allowed to give you the answer because I'm gagged by this judge. But we have a very, very serious problem here. I mean, our country's going bad. And remember, and let me just leave you with this. This is all because of Joe Biden and I don't even think it's him. I don't think he's smart enough to think about it. But it's the people that surround him in the office. They're smart. They're fascists, they're communists, but they're smart. And they're ruining our country. But we're going to win this election. November 5th is going to be the most important day in the history of our country. We're going to take back our country from these fascists and these thugs that are destroying us with inflation and with everything they do, how stupid they are, allowing 15, 16, 17 million people into our country, totally unvetted, totally unchecked. We're going to bring back our nation November 5th. Remember, most important day in the history of our country. In the meantime, this trial is rigged.
And I do think that it's unfortunate how things have started to play out as far as what's influencing people's decision to be able to vote based off of what's best for them and their family and the policies that they agree with or they disagree with. Me personally, I do think that Joe Biden is a historical politician that is one of the greatest politicians of all time because he's been able to basically morph and keep our culture in particular in the chokehold and continuing to vote for him, even though it's not best for us, in my opinion. But, that's up for you to decide yourself. For me, I'm definitely not voting for Biden. I'm definitely voting for Trump. I think that his ability to run the country for 4 years from 2016 to 20 was in my lifetime the best time for me to thrive as an individual. And I think that his policies and what he stood for and what he represented as far as what American values were, regardless of how you feel about him individually, what was best for us. And I think that now you see that and we suffering. And now we still aligning ourselves based off of a party instead of based off a policy. But I'm curious as to what you guys think about this. Make sure you tap into the Patreon on Saturday. Saturday, the first of the month, the beginning of the month is the best day to be able to tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. And then we doing after hours tonight. We're gonna extend this conversation and let the people tell you what they think. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna holler at y'all later. Peace.